This episode is sponsored by Bow Lake, the most beautiful paddle boards in the world. Visit bowlake.com and learn more. That's B-E-A-U lake.com. Bow is French for beautiful. B-E-A-U lake.com.
You're listening to The Luxury Item, the podcast on the business of luxury and the people and companies that are shaping the future of the luxury industry. Here's your host, Scott Kerr.
When it comes to Italian supercars, we think of Lamborghini and Ferrari. And when it comes to Italian luxury sports motorcycles, we think of Ducati. Ducati started manufacturing motorcycles more than 70 years ago in Bologna, Italy. Over the years, Ducati motorcycles have evolved into internationally coveted dream machines known for their precision engineering, lightning speed, and sleek design. Ducati also has a strong foothold on the racing track and is renowned for its record-breaking success in motorsports in the racing world. My guest on the luxury item is Jason Chinnock, CEO of Ducati North America. In his role as CEO, Chinnock oversees Ducati Motorcycles' largest global sales market. He pushes the brand into new product segments and disrupting the industry to adopt new technologies for innovation and safety and performance. After being recruited by Ducati North America in 2004, Chinnock was elevated to director positions in sales, marketing, and network development. After Ducati was purchased by Audi AG in 2012, he moved to sister brand Lamborghini to establish and oversee marketing and communications initiatives in North America. In 2016, Chinnock returned to Ducati North America to lead the company as CEO. Welcome to the luxury item, Jason.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. So Ducati Motorcycles has a long legacy stemming back almost a century to the company's founding in 1926. And so for the listeners out there who aren't enthusiasts but know that Ducati makes fast and beautiful motorcycles, can you share like a brief overview of the Ducati brand and what makes it fundamentally different?
It's a great question because this is something that I'm asked all the time, especially from those people who really aren't familiar with what goes in to a Ducati motorcycle and actually who we are as a brand, because we are more than just the machine itself. But speaking to the machine, our motorcycles are really known for their performance, distinctive design, and the advanced technology that we use on our motorcycle. And there are some definitely key features that differentiate Ducati from other motorcycles out there. One of them is the valve actuating system that's used in a lot of our motorcycles. It's called the desmodromic valve actuating system. And what it does is it's a very unique system that allows for more precise engine control and higher revving capabilities. Now, we've actually broadened the use of not only Desmo, but non-Desmo valve trains as well for different applications. But this is something that we've been utilizing for racing for many years, and on our higher performance motorcycles, it's quite common. The engine itself, whether it's a V4 or an L-twin, they provide this very unique sound and optimal delivery of power. And even the V4 that we have, it fires in an order. We call it a twin pulse firing order. So it has characteristics very similar to that of a twin. And then our distinctive design, which really is not only this elegance and beauty that you would expect from an Italian company, but there's also a very important focus that's put on the aerodynamics of the motorcycle, which leads to the performance. The electronics that we have on our motorcycle, we use advanced electronics like traction control, riding modes, quick shifters. And for the first time in a production series motorcycle on the Multistrada V4, we actually adapted blind spot detection radar with a motorcycle that gives you blind spot detection and then also cruise control functionality. And then our heritage. And our heritage is very heavily rooted in racing. And we have a very long history in motorcycle racing. And there's no question that it's within our DNA and a very important part of who we are as a brand. But what's great is it's not just racing for the sake of entertainment, but the technology that we derive from what we learn in racing makes its way down to our production series motorcycles. So not only do people have something to cheer on the weekend, but they also get to take a piece of that home and experience it themselves.
So 2022 confirmed itself as an exceptional year for Ducati. You passed the 60,000 bikes sold mark for the first time, and you broke 1 billion euros in revenue. And more recently, in Q1 of this year, you posted a record number of motorcycles delivered. Ducati's CEO, Claudio Domenicali, said in an article that the strong results confirm a company strategy that is paying off with a great outcome. What strategy is he attributing to Ducati's strong performance?
Well, historically, Ducati has been set up as, let's say, a premium brand or a premium motorcycle manufacturer within the arena of the industry, of the motorcycle industry. But over the last couple of years, we've reevaluated that and really made a conscious effort to shift our brand positioning from, let's say, that of a premium brand to that of an upper premium, bordering on luxury. And I think that if you were going to make a comparison to something that's familiar with a lot of people, that would be a brand similar to Porsche, where they are consistent with who they are as a brand with the sporting DNA of all of their products. But they've gradually moved the brand to that upper echelon. And it's very interesting when we looked at the motorcycle industry, realized that we're kind of in our own area. We have our own space now, which allows us to take a couple specific actions. I mean, there's many components that are involved with the strategy, but a couple key ones I would suggest to discuss are the product, as we mentioned a little bit before, really making sure that we focus on the highest quality, the best technology, the newest technology, the fit, finish, performance. And then something that sometimes gets missed, but it's really important, is the ownership experience. And making sure when somebody actually, when they take ownership of that motorcycle, the client gets an experience that's commensurate with what they would expect from the brand. And we've also really focused on our client relationships as well, including launching a top client program last year, where we identify those top clients. We provide them special experiences, access to special product. We've also moved into providing experiences for our clients, not just the training and going to the races, but travel experiences, an opportunity to take a Ducati motorcycle and have this incredible experience traveling through, whether it be, recently, I think we just did Patagonia. We have one coming up in the US here shortly. And then there's, of course, in Europe as well. And then lastly, that component is really trying to improve the retail experience. And that's when the client walks in, or the prospective client walks in, that they have a consistency in their experience, yet we have a proper coverage as well in order to ensure that it's convenient for them as a client. So those are some of the key elements of our strategy that we've really been focusing on over the last few years, and it's been put into top speed in the last couple of years, with the intent of utilizing this as an opportunity for us to differentiate ourselves beyond just the product, but actually also in the industry itself.
And what has been the most successful motorcycle for Ducati?
I like that question, because I had a chance thinking about this. Success can be measured in so many different ways. When I look at, success on the racetrack, which there's that old adage where you race on Sunday, sell on Monday. Our Panigale range has been a tremendous success, whether it be the V4 or the V2, which we just recently won a championship in the US with the Super Sport and the Panigale V2. And those motorcycles, while they aren't necessarily the motorcycle that's for everybody, in the real world, they're for those enthusiasts that want to have that little bit of sport. But we also, the great news is that a lot of that trickles down to the rest of the models in our lineup, as I mentioned previously. So I look at that model, the Panigale range, as really the halo product that influences everything else. But then when I see how Ducati has been able to expand the multistrada motorcycle, which has been out, we're in our fourth or fifth generation now. I measure the success also in the fact of bringing so many new clients to Ducati, and that's a model that's been a tremendous success for us.
What is the appeal of the multistrada?
The appeal, the multistrada is Italian for meaning multiple roads. And so here's a motorcycle that, if you can just have one motorcycle, can do everything really well. Whether it's two-up, traveling across the country with your significant other, and it's evolved to the point where now, if let's say you find yourself on a dirt road and you want to explore where this fire road goes, you can. But then the second that road ends and it becomes asphalt, it turns into that super bike, but a very comfortable, practical, dare I say, practical super bike as well. And so it's this appeal where you have, let's say, that sporting DNA that you would expect from Ducati, but the comfort and capability of a long distance touring motorcycle that can even do a little bit of light off road. And you get that emotional connection with this motorcycle and the way that it's evolved over the years. I mean, the motorcycle now is unquestionably the best it's ever been. And it's brought so many people, let's say, that were curious about Ducati, or they believed they don't make a motorcycle for me. And they see this motorcycle and they realize, no, that's something I can ride. I can be part of that. I don't have to, be bent over the handlebars in a crouching position to enjoy it. I can actually ride it comfortably and even have a passenger and do a little bit of travel if you want.
So Ducati is present in over 90 countries with a widespread sales network. I think your top markets are number one, Italy, which is the home base, and the United States, I think then Germany. Can you talk about the importance of the U.S. market for Ducati and what are your future expansion plans in the U.S.?
So the U.S. is usually head to head with Italy, competing for the number one global market. In fact, we were the number one global market in 21, and in 22, unfortunately, we lost our first place to Italy due to just product availability and some of the supply chain shortages that we were struggling with at the beginning of last year. So we're always neck and neck and always competing in a very healthy way for that. But you can imagine with us going head to head with the home market that the U.S. is a very, very important market, especially outside of Europe. And you also think that the U.S. is highly influential in terms of trends as well. And so a lot of the things that happen here eventually make their way into other markets as well later in many years down the road. And, while our products aren't designed specifically for the market, the good thing is that we have the opportunity to take the U.S. into consideration when it comes to the development of some of the product and understanding some of the features of our models to ensure that it can be applicable to the U.S. market as well. And in terms of expansion, this is interesting. Our strategy isn't necessarily set to a fixed number of dealership locations across the U.S. Our strategy is to ensure that we have the best possible market coverage in order to support the clients, but it's also to ensure it's a viable market because we want our dealer, who is our partner in this, to be profitable. And if they're profitable, we know that they will invest in delivering the best experiences for our clients. And our dealer network is a little over 130 dealers in the U.S. right now. Mm-hmm. And, like I said, there isn't a fixed number because the markets evolve. As we've even seen post-pandemic, there was a lot of people moving from major cities out to the country. And so markets that weren't viable 5 years ago are now showing to be of interest. So for us, we just want to make sure that we're delivering the best possible experience but also providing coverage and support for those clients. And as our product portfolio grows, and we do have some expansion plans in the future, which is a bit premature for me to get into that topic, but the point is that when we bring in new products to market, it will also open up the possibility of us being able to expand our network as well. If we see that now there's a market that would be appropriate for us to have a location.
And there are lots of motorcycle buying markets in the U.S., but many of them are dominated by riders who prefer brands like Harley-Davidson or Honda or Yamaha. What do you look for in a local U.S. market that shows an opportunity to increase Ducati's presence there?
We measure what's called Ducati relevant market. And so for every one of the motorcycles that we have in our lineup, we identify what would be the most reasonable competitor to that specific product. And then we evaluate what our share is in that specific market. And then we make some assumptions based on our average shares across the US. And just to give you an idea, in the over 500cc, that means motorcycles that are over 500cc cubic centimeters in capacity, which is, let's say, most on-highway market, most on-highway motorcycles, we have trending anywhere between a 3.5 to 3.7% share. So if we look into a market and we evaluate that opportunity, we refer to it as lost sales, and we evaluate our market share and determine, is there enough volume here to sustain a healthy, profitable dealership where it would make sense for us to appoint one based on the competitors that are in the market, and actually the competitor sales, I should say. So it's a bit complicated probably to discuss on the call, but that hopefully gives you an idea where we really just try to understand what the market opportunity is based on what our competitors are doing and how we perform there. In most cases, we don't perform very well if we don't have a dealership in the area, but we also need to make sure it's a large enough volume opportunity to make it viable for it to be a profitable business.
And what type of challenges does the U.S. market present in comparison to the Italian or European or British markets?
Well, I'm not in the best position to answer the other questions about the other markets because I'm not necessarily experienced. I can only speak to what I know from what my colleagues share. But I could tell you that something that's quite unique to the U.S. is that the U.S. is dominated by one brand. 50% of the on-highway sales are one brand, and also primarily one segment of motorcycling, and that's cruisers. And that is very unique. There's really no other market in the world, any large market in the world that has that sort of dominance by a single brand. And so that does influence a lot of people's perception of motorcycling in the US. Everybody, when they think of a motorcycle, they think of a cruiser. And so for us, it's a matter of getting the mind share of explaining to people that there are other motorcycles that are out there besides just the cruiser segments. And it's a completely different type of riding style, a different emotion and connection that you have with that type of a motorcycle. And in fact, we do have a couple of motorcycles that technically fit into the cruiser category, and that's the Diavel and the X Diavel. But those models are still so steeped with Ducati's DNA that we are on the fringe of that. So it's a matter of opening people's minds to the fact that there's different types of motorcycling out there besides just cruising as well. And we've done this. We've gone to different events and allowed people to test ride their motorcycles and have that comparison. But people buy different motorcycles for different reasons. Here, motorcycles are entertainment in the US. It's rarely transportation. Some people use it, claim transportation in order to justify the purchase with their significant other. But the reality is that we buy motorcycles to have fun. And I would say the majority of people that do that in first world countries, but here it generally is just something for fun. It's a bit self-indulgent, fun thing to do with your free time and your discretionary spending, and which makes it truly a luxury. And so for us, it's a matter of how do we connect with people so that they understand that we're an option for that as well.
We'll be right back after a quick break with more of my conversation with Jason Chinnock.
Bow Lake in Rocky Shore. I will return once more. Yes, I will. Boom, diddy boom boom. Boom, diddy boom, boom boom. All right.
The world's most beautiful paddleboards. Bow Lake. The water is calling.
We're back with more from Jason Chinnock. Every business where there's a consumer involved, you need to constantly innovate and excite your consumer about your brand, about your product. How does Ducati do that?
Well, that starts, I think, with the product. And we have, over the last few years, started launching what are world premieres of our product. We have lots of investment. I mean, the amount of euros that we invest into new product isn't kind of mind-boggling when you think about it, because we want to make sure that we're on the cutting edge. So having that investment of product that's always pushing the tech forward, but still having just stunning design I mean, those things are the things that excite people, to have that performance, to have that power, to have the technology. And what it does is it gives people an opportunity to feel like that they are a superhero or an athlete themselves. And then every fall, we put together a series of premieres on where we focus on each product and we take people behind the scenes in the development of the product, talking to the designers and the engineers through a video series. It's been very successful. In fact, it was a big change. Instead of doing everything at a international motorcycle show where all the products unveiled and it comes out in a big press release, we've really given people an opportunity to kind of deep dive and learn so much about the product and the brand, because you learn about the product, about the brand through the product and the people that are behind it, and giving them a chance to really have that kind of connection with what we're doing. And it's a story to tell as well. So that's one of the things that we do. But also, it's important that we engage people in the use of the product as well. And that's through some of the different experiences, whether they be riding experiences or track days or events that we host in the winter. We do a Ready for Red tour. This is a tour that's like a national product tour. We travel across the country and host an evening for Ducati clients or prospective clients that allow us to connect directly with them, to see the new products, but also to share with them what we have planned for the year. And either myself or our marketing director for North America present at every single one of these. So it's important for us to be present, and people have a great time, some good hors d'oeuvres and some drinks, and they get very excited during the winter months for the summer season to come.
I want to talk about measuring success. So what quantitative and qualitative metrics are really important to you in measuring success? Obviously, you look at the number of motorcycles delivered, and if the dealers are selling bikes at MSRP, what else do you look at? Do you ever look at, measure desirability of the brand?
We have a couple different KPIs that we measure. When it comes to the sales performance, I was sharing before, market share is probably one of our biggest single indicators. And that helps us understand our performance within the market and within the US, and how we're competing, how we're performing against our competitors. So that gives us a very good idea, because at the end of the day, that's what we're taking home. But there's other things that, let's say, are a little bit more soft. One, we measure a brand performance indicator, which helps us understand our brand in comparison to, just say, other brands out there in the world, outside of the world of motorcycling, and where we rank there and where we're weak and where we're strong. And the idea is we want to keep the strength in those areas that we do very well, for example, loyalty. But when it comes to things that we are still struggling with, and it's just general awareness, and I shared with you earlier that partially due to the US market being largely dominated by the cruiser segment, our world of motorcycling isn't necessarily in something in their consideration set. So it's important for us to understand where it is that we are challenged, and then we put together a specific action plan in order to address those areas of opportunity. And the last key indicator that we utilize, we refer to, I'm sure you've heard this before, is Net Promoter Score.
Yep.
That is, NPS is so important, because at the end of the day, well, of course, there's buying the motorcycle, but, would you recommend Ducati, whether it be the product, the dealership experience, your service experience, the brand, would you recommend them to a friend? And with our Net Promoter Score, whenever we identify someone that's raised their hand as a detractor, then we, as the executive team, we reach out directly to each one of the detractors. And we do everything that we can that makes sense to recover the detractor. We actually called it a detractor recovery project. And we do everything we can to try and resolve it. And what's amazing is that we're very successful at turning those detractors into promoters. I would confidently say 9 out of 10 are recovered. And most of them just want somebody to listen. Most people, if they have a challenge or a problem, and we are a company that is driven to be successful and professional, there are things that happen along the way. And I'm not afraid of a problem. And I encourage our team to not be afraid of problems. It's how we deal with them and how we learn from them. And we're able to recover them quite well. And that, to me, I'm very proud of that point, because not only do we recognize, but we grasp the nettle is a term that I use with my team. And that is, don't shy away from something that looks to be a problem or bad. Just go embrace it, take care of it. Because if not, it's just going to fester and it's going to get worse. And that's something that we're very proactive with that. And I mean, I have people reach out to me all the time through social media networks. If they have a problem, even though we have a client service department, we connect the dots with them right away because we know that that experience is going to differentiate us from the rest of the motorcycling world, because we are enthusiasts ourselves and love what we do. And we also understand the impact if you have an experience that wasn't what you expected or might fall short of what your expectations are. So it's our job to do our best to recover that.
So what is the profile of a typical Ducati owner and why are they attracted to the brand?
The profile of a typical Ducati owner is difficult. I mean, I can look at our client surveys and every time I look at something like that, I basically learn a little bit new. But I would say it's less demographic and more sociographic in terms of what they do with their time. And our owners are passionate about life. They're enthusiasts. They're usually risk takers to some degree. I mean, most motorcyclists are, but I think ours are ratcheted up a couple extra degrees. When you buy a motorcycle, it's not a rational purchase. It's definitely an irrational purchase. And they're very passionate about not only motorcycling, but Ducati motorcycling. And, as somebody that's passionate, we refer to our owners, our clients sometimes as fans. And, fan comes from the root fanatic.
Yep.
And as a fanatic, it can go either way. So it's so important when you have somebody that is such a fan of our brand in order to manage the brand and their expectations accordingly. And we see that we have a great sense of loyalty. And also something that I'm very encouraged by is evangelism within Ducati owners as well. And that is, they're so excited about the Ducati brand. They want to bring their friends in. They want to encourage more people to be part of it. And that's something that as the North American CEO, I want that more than anything. Even though I know that it's going to make life probably more complicated, and it is something that we love so much, we want to make sure that we give everybody an opportunity to experience that same passion and joy that we get when we ride a Ducati motorcycle and we are part of that community.
The Ducati sales triumphs come on the back of a strong performance in the racing world as well. Ducati also claimed 2 major superbike racing titles last year at 2 of the top motorcycle championships, MotoGP and World Superbike. From what I understand, the MotoGP championship titles was Ducati's first since 2007, ending a 15 years of dominance by Japanese motorcycle manufacturers. Why the long drought?
Well, I'm not on the racing side, but I can tell you from an enthusiast, maybe with a little bit of insider understanding of that world of MotoGP. The MotoGP motorcycles on those first developments of the motorcycles were very difficult for a lot of the riders to ride. And in fact, the gentleman, Casey Stoner, who won that championship for us in 2007, he was an incredible rider that could pretty much ride anything. So while it was a spectacular motorcycle, it was, think about it like a wild horse or an untamed horse. And from that point, when following that championship, there was a lot of development on the motorcycle. And I think the motorcycle, from my perspective, almost had an identity crisis, because we had a very clear idea of who we were when we first entered into MotoGP and what we were going to do. Yet it wasn't delivering the results until 2007. Over those years, there was a lot of testing and figuring out what would work to make the motorcycle easy to ride. Much easier, much more manageable to ride, because when it's easier to ride, then the rider rides with more confidence. And when the rider rides more confidence, they push themselves and they push the bike a little bit further. And it's really interesting because that same approach has been applied to our product today. And in fact, there's ergonomic adjustments in terms of the shape of the gas tank where your legs hold on to it in our Panigale range and our Street Fighter range that have specifically been designed in order to make it more comfortable for the rider, which gives them more confidence. And so the long drought was that it was just a long road in order for us to get there to develop the product in order to become an easier motorcycle for people to ride. And this is also why if you see on the podiums these days, it's not just one guy riding a Ducati that gets on the top of the box. You actually, there'll be times where there'll be two Ducatis and sometimes a full sweep of Ducatis in positions 1, 2, 3. It's because it's not one person that's figured out how to ride this motorcycle. It's our engineers and the designers have figured out how to make a motorcycle where lots of people can ride. So then it comes down to the skill of the rider. And so that's something that's, I mean, I've talked to some of the engineers and I've watched, race by race by race, how we improve year by year by a 1/10 of a second. And it's amazing, it's that how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. So every little bit that we made, every little change that we made, every little refinement, some changes take you forward and some changes take you 2 steps back. And regardless, we've gotten to the point where now we have a spectacular product, spectacular race motorcycle that it's now about the rider. So that's really an interesting way to see how it's evolved from 2007, where we had a good motorcycle, but we had a great rider.
Pretty much every industry is tripping over itself to get millennials' wallets. The motorcycle business is no different. Some iconic motorcycle brands are struggling to attract young riders. Current set of brand enthusiasts age. So what is Ducati doing to attract the new crop of riders it needs to grow the brand?
Ducati is in an interesting position, and we were talking earlier about the brand strategy. We aren't really in a entry-level product, entry-level brand. People don't come to Ducati thinking that's going to be necessarily their first motorcycle.
Right.
Now, there are some motorcycles that allow entry into the Ducati brand, like the Ducati Monster. Very easy to ride, very approachable. You can change the power so you can lower the power, and then as you evolve and grow as a rider. But from a matter of bringing new people, new riders, we're generally a little bit further down the chain or higher up the pole, if you will, in terms of ownership experience. People have usually had 1 or 2 motorcycles by the time they come to Ducati. It's much more aspirational. And we actually really like occupying that space. We've evaluated the possibility of bringing out a lower price point entry-level product with the idea of potentially using that as a tool to bring in new riders. The challenge is in order for us to do that, that has to come at a price point that we're not willing to do because we can't do it correctly. We're not confident that we could build a Ducati that is worthy of wearing the Ducati badge and the logo, that will not pull down, our flagship bikes or the other bikes in the lineup.
Right.
So that's a big risk. And, when you think about a brand, we're talking about Porsche, there's an entry-level Porsche is a pre-owned Porsche, usually.
Right.
And, there's not a $30,000, walk in the door and get yourself a new Porsche. That's just not the way it works. And so we find ourselves in that same aspirational position. Now, that being said, we do have a product line that's a sub-product, a sub-brand of Ducati, and that's Scrambler. And Scrambler, we separate it even as its own brand, if you will, within the Ducati world. And the great thing about Scrambler is it is relatively inexpensive. It's still not, let's say, cheap in comparison to its the competitive set, probably a good 20-30% higher. But it does still have the technology and the performance that people would expect of a bit of a classic Ducati. And also from a matter of design, it's approachable. When you see one, it doesn't look intimidating. It doesn't look like you have to be a professional. It just looks fun. And for people new to motorcycling, or even those that have returned to motorcycling, the Scrambler has been a great tool for us to be able to do that. And we can do that without it, having any risk of pulling down the Ducati brand because it's a sub-brand. And that has been a very good success for us in terms of bringing people new to motorcycling. And as I mentioned before, one of the best ones that I've seen is just people returning back to motorcycling as well. Because there's a lot of people that had motorcycles, let's say when they were younger, and then life happens, whether it be, I got married, had kids, decided to give up the motorcycle, and then empty nesters, and all of a sudden, I want to get a motorcycle again. And sometimes their ambition is to jump on, a Multistrada V4 with 160 plus horsepower. But in reality, coming back into motorcycling, a Scrambler Icon is the perfect bike to usher yourself back into motorcycling.
In a recent interview, you were asked about Ducati building an electric motorcycle. You said that it's going to be some years before Ducati has a consumer electric motorcycle because the battery technology really isn't there. Yet, in a statement in 2019, your CEO said Ducati's future is in electric. Is the state of battery technology just not up to Ducati's standards of performance and energy storage?
It definitely isn't there. And this is something that's quite unique in the world of motorcycling in comparison to automotive, which, people make that comparison to automotive too easily. The thing that is the primary consideration that we have is what's referred to as energy density. And right now, an internal combustion engine and traditional gasoline fuel actually has a much higher energy density than the battery technology that's currently available on the market. And ultimately what that means, if you take a motorcycle, let's say like the Panigale V2, which is our middleweight superbike, and let's call that roughly 400 pounds. I know it's a bit less, but in order for you to make that motorcycle perform at the same level in terms of range and in performance and top horsepower, the motorcycle is going to weigh over 700 pounds. And that immediately is going to compromise the performance of the motorcycle.
Right.
Because with the batteries in a car application, the batteries are usually laid flat, very low center of gravity in the floorboards of a car. With a motorcycle, you really have one place to go and you have to go up.
Right.
And so as a result, that changes the handling of the motorcycle dramatically, not only the weight, but the handling. So you're not going to get a good experience. And we need to ensure that if somebody is going to have an electric Ducati, that it has to deliver that experience as a Ducati. Once again, as I mentioned before, we're not dealing in transportation. This is not a scooter to get you from point A to point B. This is something people do for fun. And there's an expectation that they have when they come to Ducati brand, and we have to deliver on that. Now, I don't want to sound like a dinosaur and say it's never going to happen, because it is. The technology is rapidly evolving, rapidly developing. And in fact, we have invested heavily into the Moto E series, being the sole supplier for basically the E motorcycle version of MotoGP. And we're utilizing this as a rolling R&D lab for our ability to learn about this technology. In fact, we designed a very specific battery application where our batteries are a series of cells that run along a carbon frame as well to be able to help with the distribution of the weight, and also making it a stressed member almost of the entire vehicle with the frame in there. So we're investing very heavily into understanding the technology. And there's also a lot of new things that are on the horizon in terms of battery tech. But, the last point I want to make, that a lot of people find this confusing. Our objective is not to build an electric motorcycle. That's not the single objective. Our objective is to reduce our carbon footprint. That's it. And there are many ways to do that. An electric motorcycle is one of the ways, probably a very expeditious way, assuming the technology is there for us to apply. But there are other alternative fuels. There's lots of other technologies that can be considered as well that will help us do that. And that's really our goal in terms of being a sustainable, environmentally responsible company, is to be able to reduce our carbon footprint. So while E is one option, we're definitely researching many other options in the interim until that can become viable.
Ducati and Lamborghini have built a strong relationship over the last few years, and just recently you partnered with Lamborghini on a joint museum experience. Can you talk about how this collaborative project came about, and what are you hoping visitors to the museum will come away with about the two brands?
Well, I have a unique perspective because I spent some years working for Lamborghini as the general manager of marketing for the Americas. And it was very interesting because, Ducati and Lamborghini are both in Emilia-Romagna, which is one of my favorite parts of Italy that's probably underappreciated and undervisited typically, with the exception of gearheads in the Motor Valley, which the area is referred to as. Um, I really don't know exactly how the project came about, with the exception that a lot of our colleagues work together. In fact, culturally, the organizations are very similar. They're 20 minutes apart from each other. And it not only does it make good sense, but it reinforces each one of the brand's unique characteristics. And, my time at Lamborghini was an incredible experience, but it was definitely a very distinctively different company, not just because of it being automotive, but because of its original founder, and how much of a maverick he was, and how much that drove the evolution of the business and where it's got to today. And that spirit is still alive there. So I think what people will come away with is that there is this rich heritage in the Motor Valley for things with wheels that go fast. And to have this experience between these two museums, I mean, it's a very inspiring experience. I remember when I first visited the Ducati Museum in 2000. I was over there on my honeymoon, and I convinced my new bride for us to drive from one side of Italy to the other and stop by Borgo Panigale in Bologna on the way, which it really wasn't on the way, but we tried anyway.
Right.
Tried to convince her of that, and she accepted it. But we drove by. I went and took a tour of the museum and the factory. And I was so inspired that I told her at that moment, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to change careers. And I want to go work full-time in the motorcycling business. And I think I want to work for Ducati. I mean, that's how inspiring it was for me. And, if we could inspire future generations that happen to be coming through to take this tour, to be the leaders of these organizations, and are motivated by that purity of what's there, then I think it's a tremendous opportunity to bring these two together.
So where do you want Ducati to be by 2025?
Where do I want Ducati to be by 2025? This is, we as an organization, we want to deliver the best possible experiences that we can on two wheels. That's, I think, to simplify it. If we have profitable dealers, they take care of their customers and our clients, and us working together to deliver that best possible experience of a sport motorcycle. Because you think about there's lots of different motorcycles that people have that are out there, but being able to be part of this community of the Ducati riders, and to have a network that is just as passionate about Ducati as we are, and clients as well. My success, or where I'd like to see us there, is just to have a profitable, sustainable business that could take care of people correctly and grow it in a very natural way. That's a kind of a roundabout way to get to the answer, but it's funny. I think in terms of we plan our business usually 5 years out in advance, and as much as I enjoy Ducati, and it's something I mentioned earlier, I would love for as many people to have the opportunity to have the Ducati experience as well. And, this is something that we are not an exclusive brand where we want to exclude people, which is, an interesting position for us to be. We're aspirational, yet not exclusive, yet in that upper premium luxury segment. And the intention is that we want people to have that desire to learn about us and to be curious, and then to take that step and have that experience. And I want as many people to be able to have that experience as possible. But it's not for everybody as well. We know that.
So my final question, Jason, is the luxury item question, which I ask all my guests. So if you were stranded on a deserted island and you can only have one luxury item with you, what would that luxury item be? It can't be any form of air or water transportation. So no amphibious Ducatis or anything that requires mobile service so you can call somebody to get you off that island. It's just you on a deserted island with palm trees, sand, and miles of ocean. What would that one luxury item you would like to have with you?
This is a very easy one for me. I think probably some people would struggle with it, but what would you want that would pass the time but keep you sharp, thinking, creative, inspired? I would want a custom-built, weatherproof Martin guitar to sit out there under a palm tree, to write music, to get inspired, and to pass the time. And that's something that I've played music on the side, and I've written music for years, and it's one of the things that I enjoy. And usually moments of tragedy inspire some of the best music and solitude. And I would think that would be an incredible environment to be able to be in, to make the best out of that situation.
And great choice of guitar brand. Jason Chinnock, CEO of Ducati North America, thank you so much for joining me on The Luxury Item.
It's my pleasure, Scott. Thank you so much for the invitation.
That's it for this episode of the Luxury Item Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this useful and entertaining, I would be really grateful if you can share it with a friend or colleague. I would love it if you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other listeners find us. The Luxury Item Podcast is a production of Silvertone Consulting. I'm your host, Scott Kerr. Until next time.